Regarding my friend, the incredible pianist with a revolutionary approach to music, he died at 50. Now, part of the problem was he was taking maybe 20 different prescription drugs and, definitely had some hypochondria there. But the gifts that he had were phenomenal, were just out of this world. And he showed me a certain type of technique to create tensile strength in each finger. So he called it popping, finger popping. But at any rate, he seemed to have a problem with Mozart. And I would ask him, why don't you like Mozart? And he would say, no, I love Mozart. But he said, what a waste. And I said, what do you mean? He said, his later works. And because he was a pianist, he would talk about the late piano concertos from 24 in C minor to 27. And 24 in C minor is a fabulous work, but he had problems with it. Now, I would bring him back and say, but wait a minute. You had problems with the economy. You had the nobility that had fled because of the Ottomans encroaching upon Vienna. And I said, look, you just can't take away the summer of 1788. Mozart wrote Symphony number 39, Symphony 40 in G minor, and 41, the Jupiter, and explained to him when it comes to polyphony, when it comes to intricate counterpoint, there's no equal to the Jupiter, other than maybe Mendelssohn's Octet, which, by the way, he wrote when he was 14. So, we had some rigorous debates. I was a kid, he was older, but I believed at the time that I held my own. Perhaps that wasn't the case, because the more I looked at the situation, sure, was Mozart a hack? Well, any artist who wants to survive off their art sometimes needs to do what they do to feed their family or feed themselves. And it's true, Mozart was always seeking commissions. And it's also true that, he had donations. But who hasn't? Socrates did. He had patrons. They call me, at least Jim Stewartson calls me pathetic hobo. And there's an Aramaic curse that was hurled at Jesus after his trial, which was a curse that insulted his poverty and his arrogance. And, that was all part of the game, which the real deal with Jesus is he overturned the tables. If he was around today, he would have gone into Goldman Sachs and said, or actually he would have been on Wall Street on the floor, trading desk, and it would have overturned them. So, there's a lot to be said for composers who move the world. We don't remember the military commanders of Mozart's day, whether they're Viennese or Turkish, but we do remember some of the musicians. And in the Rococo period, it would be, of course, Gluck and Mozart and Haydn and Johann Christoph Bach, one of Bach's sons, and George Friedrich Bach. Bach had a huge musical family. We've talked about them. And when it came to financial stability, Haydn was probably the more prudent of the two. Now, a lot of people can't distinguish between Haydn and Mozart. They sound very similar in a lot of ways, but I can. And Haydn ended up moving to London and he worked for a family called the Esterházys, sorry, and they paid him well. Now Mozart was in England in 63 and 64, at 1763 and 64, and believe it or not, he played for Crazy George, the guy who launched a revolution against us. And he played for George and Charlotte. And even though the Mozart family lived in Chelsea, they saw King George and Queen Charlotte on the street as their royal carriage drove by, and they looked out and they waved to the Mozart family. So it's very interesting. I like to look at history as a pulsating, living, vibrating thing rather than a corpse to be dissected. Historians always do autopsies. I don't think that's the right approach to history. So that's that. At any rate, in some ways, my friend was right about Mozart, but in some ways he was dead wrong. And he looked at it from a pianistic point of view. Now, he was a world-famous musician, world-famous pianist, world-famous scholar. Wonderful guy. But I think he quit performing right when the Beatles came out. Did their first American tour. What was that, 1964? I think he had just basically said, I'm done with this shit. And, he did not like the crowds, even though he was adored and even though they raved about him. But he was part of that whole Canadian wave that came out in the 60s. And we got to experience it in Los Angeles, up close and personal. Zuba Mehta, of course, being one, and talked about Ronald Torini, and there were others too. But very interesting times to have a father who was a frustrated would-be concert pianist and composer, interrupted by World War II, ended up going back to University of Chicago, getting his medical degree, in the top 60 out of class of 1,000, and had a very successful career in psychoanalysis. So that's that. Thanks for listening to a little snippet of my life.